attention right out of the
Yeah.
gate. So
Yeah.
we've done mid-conversation, just right in the middle of something, just a couple things, because
Yeah. We're still This is a work in progress. Really, we
we
are
have
a work in
80.
progress.
So Jeremy Vest said we have 80 something videos to go, right?
Yeah. He said we got to get to 100 before we're actually any good. And I'm like,
well, then you have to have me again for a do-over.
Heck yeah.
You can come back when we're good at what we do. We're just kind of here right now.
Yeah.
We'll get there eventually. So my name is Casey Watkins. I just want to welcome everybody. With Sith Marketing, I have my wonderful and yet somewhat handsome co-host, Kevin.
That's the second time I'm wonderful. Wow,
Oh,
man,
dang it.
I'm honored with the presence of Casey Watkins.
got-
Of course.
I've got to write down words. Can't use
And,
wonderful.
no.
Okay. That's in my
No.
spreadsheet now.
And this is the amazing Bonnie Stefanick, longtime friend, PubConner, marketer. She's take it away, Bonnie.
Yeah, so great to be here. I'm Bonnie Stefanick. I currently work on platform strategy at Group M at EssenceMediacom, and my kind of background, I guess I would say that I'm collecting what's the Thanos glove? How's it called? His gauntlet where he collects the jewelry in it. I do basically that, but of marketing. So the gauntlet, I forget what it's called. It's like the gauntlet of, I don't know.
I never saw it.
I know I saw it and I don't remember now. But anyway, so analogy falls flat. But basically I've worked across growth, brand, product marketing, and analytics. And so kind of really excited to share kind of thoughts and kind of connect with this great group.
I am. Bonnie, you're amazing in analytics, and then you really dove into to audiences and getting deep into that. I guess hold on just a second. So you've been talking about like growth and performance and like changing the way we think about that.
Yeah, so one of the interesting things with kind of coming from performance and then kind of working in brand marketing is you kind of start to see kind of like how like the differences and disparities between the two and kind of like where they synergize. And kind of now working within the space of kind of identity and audience, kind of how that whole dynamic is shifting with the changing kind of landscape. So the recent news that we've heard is that Google's pushing back their cookie deprecation timeline to 2024. And we kind of know that marketers are all kind of trying to figure out what to do and kind of building test and learn roadmaps and kind of setting up their infrastructure for like what does the future look like. But what's interesting to me, just kind of across brand performance and kind of that underlying layer, is how it exposes something in marketing that's almost been kind of broke because of the technology that's now going away. So kind of with cookies, I think any of us who have been doing analytics a long time, like web analytics, like going back to when we used to do analytics with like log analysis tools, if anybody remembers those, and kind of the early days of like Urchin and then Google Analytics and so forth. The first party cookie is notoriously temperamental. And it gets notoriously angry, and kind of managing those tags and making sure even on your website that you administer your tags, having good data quality is hard. Now, amplify that in a third-party context. That data, at best, is fuzzy, and it has been fuzzy when we had it. So now, kind of, however, that fuzzy data was what a lot of kind of brands were relying on to be able to try to understand this notion of attribution and this notion of like path analysis and all of that. And kind of with that is the assumption that you can kind of, that all marketing, it could be distilled down to kind of like performance marketing, right? That every interaction that somebody has has like a immediately quantifiable dollar to it. And kind of what this resulted, in my opinion, in the way that you think of channel planning, is that certain channels that were closer to that kind of point of purchase, they got richer, and all of the other channels got poorer. So, for example, Google got rich, but so search, um, paid search got an enormous amount of credit. Paid social, where you're transacting, where you're able to kind of transact people for certain types of products, get an enormous amount of kind of credit. But then, kind of when you think about some of your channels that are your earned channels rather, they're less reportable, like SEO, like kind of even like some out of home stuff, like that stuff got less credit just inherently because you just couldn't report on it. And even things like podcasting, right? Like we're on a podcast now, like it's just tougher to report, right? So kind of when you're doing the kind of that old style attribution, its contribution is invisible. But we all know kind of brands exist, and I think Apple's actually counterintuitively a great example of that. Why you can, out of all the laptops in the world, like why this one? And Apple has done a tremendous job of kind of building a brand. So we know that this is still a concept, but I think especially a lot of small business and mid-market brands kind of became really reductionistic with the way they talk about growth marketing. And kind of what I would say almost is that they conflated marketing with online sales. When you do sales, you have leads, you have people, and then this is just kind of in generically speaking, you have people who know that they want a thing. They know that they need a thing, and we would say that they're in market, right? And performance marketing is all about closing the people who are already in category or in market. And kind of what tends to, and that's great. And what do you want when someone's in category or in market? You want to close that deal as efficiently as possible and then maximize the number of people purchasing, so effectiveness for the lowest amount of cost, efficiency. But what happens what happens if you're in a competitive category where you can only afford, N number of those people, right? Because it's heavily competitive in the performance channels where you're playing. Or what happens if you run out of demand, which I've seen happen, where I'm just like, we're spending so much, we're literally like spending for every click. Well, what do you do next? Like, how do you show kind of the next quarter or the next year the rev growth that you need? And that's where marketing comes in. Like at some point, you need to generate new demand. And I think that some of the thinking in kind of the and I don't want to call it a dogma, but in the thinking that I know I grew up with as a marketer, that drive to performance and that drive to growth, it is, I think, one side of the equation. And for a long time, and I think cookies were kind of part of this, with the way that kind of we kind of, I don't want to say we're still doing measurement and, cookies are not gone yet, but with the old way of thinking about measurement, it's very skewed towards like what we can see. And I think it's very natural. And I think it comes at the cost of kind of doing the basics of marketing well for a lot of brands. Not all of them. Like obviously at the enterprise level, it's a little bit different, but especially for the small business and mid-market, kind of performance tends to eat all the budget, and very, very little room to think in innovative ways about growing brand. And that's unfortunate, because that's where like incremental growth happens.
Man, the allure of the data and being able to go, I can get everything, and I can start analyzing every step along the path. but but then we wind up bottlenecking up to a certain point, right? We grow and grow, and all of a sudden it's like, why are our costs per lead like we should just be able to turn it up, turn up our budget. What's the problem? It's like we capped out, and we need to
Yeah,
do
what do
more.
you do? What do you do at that point? And it requires kind of like a new. I think that there's room to kind of do a new, like to have a reset and to do. I think this is like a marketplace opportunity to do like new thinking for brands of all sizes, to kind of start thinking about like, well, should we like even for brands that have like a tighter budget, like should we make room for a test and learn agenda? Because especially for small mid-market brands, it's very hard to get like a dedicated testing budget that they don't take away from you. Um, and they're like, no, we need, you have a conversation, everybody agrees, and then kind of you go back, it's like, no, but we need more sales, we
Yeah.
need more leads. There goes the test and learn budget. And then having like, and then finding kind of like what works for brand. And that obviously varies by category, varies by, your channel mix, by a million factors, but like, like making, I think just creating, I think this is like a great uh, opportunity to acknowledge the ambiguity, but also recognize that in the past, proper credit wasn't given to these other channels, and educate our, um, especially kind of small business and mid-market kind of type brands that, the opportunity exists within brand marketing, and kind of cultivate that patience, that like you're not going to get to see the numbers instantly, because that's the other bad thing that analytics kind of trained us to do. I can know right away.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
in fact, I've worked with people in the past, and kind of where you literally have like real-time dashboards to manage like your performance team, where people are looking like at the dashboard, like as soon as you start your day, it's like the first thing that you open up, and it's not just like the performance marketing person, but the boss's 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 boss. um
Everything's like, where's the numbers? Where's the numbers? Yeah.
Right, but are we doing marketing? And that's the whole thing. Does that feel like you're doing marketing, or does that feel like you're doing sales?
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it feels like, I mean, it's, yeah, yeah, exactly. Well said.
So, so the question kind of for you is kind of in the space of, well, for you guys, like in kind of the space of search, like since things are evolving, right? Are you seeing kind of like, I mean, with like the cookieless world, I mean, Google's taking away, more queries all the time. Like, are your conversations with like your brands changing or shifting? And kind of what new things are you trying with like the changing ecosystem?
Well, GA4. um, I mean, I think I've been talking about cookies for like the problems of cookies getting diminished for like years. And a lot of times, if you're not in advertising where you're worried about the performance, my experience is that people look at you kind of side eye, like, "What's the big deal?" Like, yeah, and they're not observing that this could be having a negative effect. But I tell anybody I'm talking to about like if you don't build a solid business foundation, like being able to close the leads that you get, taking care of your SEO. If the SEO is working, m- my results get better on search. I know that happens and I can feel it. If it's not there, if you're not taking care of the SEO and taking care of the website, my results suck. It's just, I mean, I can make up for it somewhat, because using Google's AI to help hone in on these kind of people and stuff. But um, it's I think there's a lot of people who don't quite on it. It's it's a mixed conversation, I guess.
Yeah. Most of mine is, I would say, making sure. I mean, the conversations aren't really changing that much. I deal with a lot of smaller end businesses. Most of the stuff I deal with, they're more of getting them to actually help participate in the marketing. Because as an agency, there's only so much I can do. I mean, I'm not out there every day up on a roof with them, so I can't really take photos of that type of stuff. But just getting them to take photos and send them to me so I could post them to social medias for them and actually make good marketing materials for online use is totally different beast.
I think
Yeah.
it's like a great call out, just kind of is from like a, like tactics and kind of brand stuff that kind of tends to get lost, like even kind of taking advantage, especially for like small and mid-sized like brands, like having like collecting like high value assets that can then be like leveraged, and kind of like what are the opportunities with user generated content, with conversations that they're already having. So like
Yeah.
going through kind of like chat logs to like identify like happy customers and generating case studies and things like that. Like there's so many kind of great opportunities and kind of things like that that enhance marketing kind of tends to get lost if you're just
Yeah.
taking a pure, call me when you have like n number of sales and a number of, I don't want to hear from you unless my sales are the low end. So I think kind of that participatory element is so important, and I think that's a great call out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part. There's some owners wind up in the or people in running a business. They're like, okay, I've hired a marketing agency. They're going to take care of these things. I'm like, you have to have some kind of involvement in this process. Checking out is, and then coming back and go, well, I thought you guys were taking care of this. I mean, you're in the day to day, right? um, it's got to have your they're gonna have to interact with your company, right? We're not going to have that voice, and that same feel. We can try to get to know you as well, you know that brand effect, and it's got to display the people that you're going to be interacting with, and the way that they, I don't know, anyways. I don't know. um,
Yeah, no, I think that that's so important. Yeah, and having that solid relationship and kind of really, having kind of like that like a good person to kind of connect to like be like the champion, and kind of be the be like a good steward of to like help the agency win. I definitely think that that's such a huge component, especially for like if for smaller and emerging brands. And kind of what do you see like is like the attitude with kind of in terms of like being able to kind of like test with these like smaller and and like mid market, like because I know in the past, like in a former life, like testing was always a huge challenge to kind of get that testing budget to kind of really like like to figure out, especially now we're in such an ambiguous landscape. I mean, you brought up GA4, and one of the really exciting things for me in GA4 is that they offer new like kind of like modeling options off of the universe of data and Google Analytics for audiences. So kind of you can take, your I don't know, whatever you can take, like my first party buyer who's also interested, who's a food lover, and look alike off of it, right?
can you do that?
Like,
Oh, sorry, go ahead. That feature, can you do that with non-purchases? I know you can do that with the purchase event.
yeah, you can do it with anything. So, like, let's say you have like an event trigger that's like a, you know, I like brand intenders, and that could mean anything, like visited a product page or clicked a button or any class of buttons or whatever purchase intender means, or brand intenders. You can kind of take that event trigger that fires within, collect it into an audience, and then what you can do is you can kind of take that and create overlaps with against Google's like syndicated taxonomy, and then have that kind of like be the audience definition like together. Because that's one of the that's one of the things that are really interesting to me from the audience standpoint. Then you can like look like off of that. So whatever that interesting interaction is, that it's a, I want people who are like more like this. Google Analytics offers those features. And what's interesting, and this is why a testing budget is important, at least to me in this moment, because we're seeing so much new stuff, is that you can then take that and test it against how does it do against audience expansion, or in like a DV360 or like programmatic standpoint, how does this do against like DV360 quota, and to see, you know, how like and what universe of data, you know, what modeling approach, even within Google's own ecosystem, performs best. And you really need like, you know, like having a test budget really makes that a lot easier. So kind of curious, like with all of the changes, are you seeing kind of clients being more open to kind of having that dedicated kind of testing budget, or like more open to kind of like testing in general to kind of like find what plays well?
Personally, and I'm guilty of part of the problem. A lot of times we're teaching a customer, this is this is what you can expect, right? Um, and if they get used to the performance part, um, now you're kind of locked in. If you get to a point and you go, we're gonna have to start branding, we're gonna have to start expanding that. Um, okay, but I'll give you a little bit, but I don't. But if we're getting, if our numbers aren't looking, great on the, but when they're saying that, they're saying it from a performance perspective. They're not just saying their overall revenue. They're saying, if our cost per lead starts going up or our cost per sales starts going up, we're gonna have to pull back on that branding, right? And
Yeah.
so it's yeah, I do have difficulty if I've taught someone the wrong way, or if that's the way they've been taught to interact with the marketing world. um yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's really challenging, right? Because what we should all be looking at is our revenue numbers. And even and I think B2B is really guilty of this. B2B became, and I'm not saying there's like, you know, incredible players in the B2B space, like that do marketing really well. I think Salesforce does marketing really well. I think CrowdStrike does, you know, marketing really well. But I can, you know, yeah, I can think of many players that kind of got that myopic view of like marketing qualified MQLs, and you know, and just like all we have to do is hit our forecasted number and our job is done. It's, you know, it's with like a sales guy, right? But like, you know, how when you're driving to that, like using the performance, you know, approach, that's all you care about. So whether that person is like intending to buy or whether they just like wanted the free white paper or whatever it was, like doesn't matter to you. Your job, you see your job is done because you've hit your numbers. So whether that person results in like a close at all, or whether they were just like, you know, wanting information, you know, your job is done. And that's like problematic because we're like that. Then you kind of have that gap between your MQLs and your SQLs. And kind of that's where I think some of the tension happens between marketing teams and kind of some sales teams, because then, you know, they're like, why are you sending me all these crap leads?
Yeah.
But we're not in the business of and that's the whole thing. Like in marketing, like we're in the business of, you know, why, like, you know, I using Salesforce as an example, like why, you know, what problem are you having that, you know, a solution to your problem, it may be, you know, like, you know, knowing that you have a problem, like you're doing everything in spreadsheets, and that could be an answer like for that, like a project management system or CRM or whatnot. But like helping consumers recognize that they have like a problem and introducing a concept of demand and then funneling them through. Like, and I think kind of especially in B2B, there was this obsession with just like driving MQLs and driving SQLs that everybody forgot about revenue.
Yeah.
I focus very much on the quality aspect, but it becomes a
Yeah.
challenge because you can have it dialed in. Sorry, this is my guilt, like of the performance
You're
perspective, right?
all
Or you've
you're
got it
all
like it's like, oh my god, it's humming and you know it, and then but it's not going to stay that way, right? It's going to fall off, and then because especially now there's very much driven by conversions are their own kind of targeting, right? So if you start getting like I guess your data starts getting mixed up with, you get some poor stuff that from the sales perspective coming in, but it triggers a conversion, right? Now the sales are like, hey, these are bad leads, but they've already been taught that they should expect these leads coming in, and they're good, right? So and then they come back and go, it's not a sales problem. This is clearly a marketing problem, and that's like it's a catch 22.
Yeah, we've lost our ability to, like, in many ways, and and it's been like a big relearning journey for me too. And kind of because I think like one day I was like, oh my gosh, like I do online sales, like because like landing in like when kind of you take that shift away from performance based planning to reach based planning. Like so, for example, like in performance based planning, we love like high frequency because we're trying to get you to close.
Yeah,
In reach-based play kind of planning, like we want like frequencies to be like much lower. So, because we're trying to reach new people, we're trying to just like let you know that, we exist. And they, that you let you know that you do have a problem. And then if you do know you have a problem, let you know that there's a realm of solution for you, and kind of generate that demand. So the way it operates is totally different, and the way you measure on it,
Yeah.
like holding it to that same standard of like just a real-time refreshing dashboard, it's just it really kind of hurts your ability to like if you're like a year one to like year three company, and you're just kind of like like a startup, just you need to churn through people to kind of figure out what your product is, then it's fine for that. But then you've trained all those people to just like expect that, and it's like when that revenue tapers off, what do? You need a shift. You need to like shift an approach, and it's just like and it's a tough thing for a performance marketer to be like, we're gonna triple, 3x, 4x the amount of money we spend on creative. That's number one. We are gonna, we're in the realm of new metrics, and we're gonna have to start thinking about things like video completion rates. We're gonna have to start thinking about like just a whole different brand voice, right? And
yeah.
running like a brand, a brand lift studies, like and just totally shifting the metrics that we think about. It's very, very uncomfortable, and that's why in a lot of like smaller kind of like growth startup environments, that kind of very early stage kind of marketing lead tends to kind of be switched out to like a different one that's more familiar with kind of that brand side. And there's kind of um, there tends to be that shift because it just requires like in some ways opposite thinking.
I think um, yeah, I think we're going to have it's going to be a very painful transition in a lot of ways, because I mean, talk about the giant company that reach that everybody knows, right? And then you take the small company. um, it's very easy for a narrative to take hold looking at data. And when you look at it, we can go, well, it happened for this reason. Oh, we think it happened for this reason. Maybe it was in seasonality. Maybe it was, oh, I started doing this. I could, oh, well, clearly I was, well, this had to have happened because I did this, right? There's not oftentimes enough data to actually come to a true conclusion.
Mhm.
So that's where I say it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know how to guide. I mean, have, there's a lot of people coming along in this data science and stuff, and I'm like, thank goodness, because we're gonna need more of those people.
I think kind of what's really exciting with kind of like with the cookieless world, especially, is like some of the areas of innovation. I for one, from an audience standpoint, I'm really excited for GA4 because it kind of brings kind of DMP style capabilities so data management platform, so where you can kind of take your first party data and at least like a little bit for like that small kind of medium sized advertisers know a little bit more about your users outside your walls. So for example, for kind of like enterprise advertisers, they'll kind of connect with lots of different third party data sources to kind of be able to kind of profile and understand their consumers and kind of like really like enrich their CRM data. But kind of for the small business advertiser, being able to enrich against kind of Google's syndicated taxonomy can tell you a lot more about kind of the persona of your users than kind of was available in the past. And that's something I think I'm really excited about just because it's, not an incremental cost, right? You just have to like, I believe, I only like you have to like enable Google Signals and like a couple more things, and kind of you can start kind of learning like, you know, who is my consumer when they're not like doing roof repair or thinking about roof repair. Who are they? Like what is their demographic? What is their kind of age, right? What is their kind of what are some of their interests? And I think it starts to kind of create like an opportunity for like interesting hypotheses, even for small businesses. And if you do have that kind of engaged kind of person that you're working with as an agency, it creates a lot of opportunities for interesting conversations for like, you know, who is your customer as like people within the community.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, this is something that you were really good at is being much more measured and testing on numbers. When I know when I'm used to having like so, sometimes smaller companies. Like, I mean, we might be dealing with just a couple $1,000s, right? There's not much data to make a decision on. Um, and so sometimes it's easy to go, oh, okay, this looks right. Let me go this direction. Um,
Yeah,
but being able to like look and find tools like GA4 and resources that can pull in, look at collective data and assist, right? That'll be invaluable. People who know those kind of tools, the kind of stuff you're doing.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's nice because like GA4 democratizes it a little bit, and I think that that's really exciting. And also, kind of like one thing I would say about operating with kind of small budget, I think like even if you're like, for some like, small and micro advertisers, there's not going to be room for like a dedicated testing budget because, you're only
Yeah.
spending $1,000 a month, where, $25 testing budget
Right.
or $100 testing budget, where it's going to take us. Like even doing one landing page test, usually in a year, we'll know
Yeah.
whether it works. But like I think the opportunity there is maybe, and just kind of running by this is to kind of when you're thinking about your media plan, like can you kind of for areas of the week or the year where your traffic is low, where it's just, you're just maintaining, because like typically you're running in like an always on context. It's just your budget, like you're not running in flights where you're only running like ads like in a couple times of the year. But maybe when you're in like the less busy time of the year, layering in testing at that time, and then just like you that may be a way with some of the micro advertisers to kind of layer in some hypotheses and set the expectation like, hey, there's like a lull at this time, maybe it's an opportunity to try something new, and then work with them to like present them with like a couple hypotheses, and then maybe be like, okay, well, of these four things, would any of them interest you, and do you feel like they would be a strong performer for the business, and just give them a recommendation and see where it takes you.
Yeah, that's a good one. Some of the challenges that go in with a really small micro advertiser, I like that term,
Yeah,
is that especially if there's a seasonality to it, um, like if it's heating and cooling HVAC, right? Um, August in Texas, um, y- you don't have to try; you're gonna make money.
yeah,
And so and the landing page that like you really need to like work on, it can give you false results in August, right? Because you're like, oh my god, it's explosive. And then you take it through other times. How do you get someone to like maintenance people don't want to do maintenance on, like, it's fine. I heard a little rattle. Yeah, it'll cost some. We'll get to it. We'll get to it. 2 years
Yeah,
later, that person, so the off season is when you're having just the occasional work coming in. It's kind of slowing down, but that landing page is not going to be the same motivator, right? I don't
right.
know. Not trying to throw a wrench into it, but um,
Yeah, well, I think that there's an interesting hypothesis in there. So, like, kind of what I'm kind of hearing in that example is that kind of in kind of an HVAC on season, like that is kind of like the money time. You just need to make sure you're moving, everything's working perfectly and on all cylinders, right? With your on season messaging. And in your off season, that's a brand problem, right?
yeah,
How do we convince and a communication problem? And this is where I talk about there's a brand opportunities. Like, how can we convince people in the off season, that this is something that they should do? And it's going to be like 50 times more expensive or whatever if they wait. And is there a story that you can tell some of your off-season customers that you can get more efficiently because the clicks are cheaper, that you can reach with maybe like higher funnel, maybe there's like home repair enthusiasts. I don't know, like maybe there's like, cautious, homeowners or like, new homeowners where they just got their house, but they're really, you know, when you get something new and it hasn't gotten its first scratch yet, you're extra protective,
yeah,
like are there, some hypotheses you can test in that time to kind of create that incremental growth and create that demand and and if there's an appetite for it. So what I'm hearing in a scenario like that is that in your on season, you just have to, get the basics right. But in your off season, that's like the space to create the pent up demand
yeah.
that you can then, like, I don't know if you guys watch Dragon Ball Z, like Kamehameha in the on season.
There was a couple episodes that might have. Uh, I know the show. I just
I'm a nerd. I'm sorry.
yeah.
This is my second like nerd. This is my second nerd. Maybe somebody that watches
See,
this later
Oh,
will
oh,
will appreciate my humor.
my
I'm not a
son watched
Dragon
a
Ball
lot.
Z. I'm Pokemon.
Oh, okay. Um, oh, wait. I don't know anything about Pokemon. Nerd cred loss. But
Pikachu.
yeah, so yeah, that's what I would say. Like, is there like a space in there to like before the season starts to start like building awareness? Like summer's coming.
I think that's a
You know what
brilliant
I'm
point. Maybe
saying?
there's some DIYers. I think we've seen in the last few years a change where people are seeking answers to different things. Like, I mean, I'll say take one for example. Like in Texas here, we've had a heat wave and a freeze in which we had brownouts and blackouts in different areas, right?
Mhm.
And now we've got energy bills that are going up. Now there's a time where people are thinking, "Hey, I might need to do something about this. What's my solution?" And so
Mhm.
tapping into that and like giving them ideas on how they can do things and opening up their mind, because I think it's become painfully aware. I think most people have realized that maintenance is much cheaper than acting in crisis. But
Yes.
we've all just kind of let the sleeping dog lie and then paid for it in the end. And I think
Yeah.
now is the time people are more likely to go, "It's got to be a better way to do things," and maybe this is yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's it. If kind of the business owner, the marketing director, whoever, like they want to show that incremental revenue growth in the summer season, you're paying for everybody. That's it. And Google's taking probably their hefty toll too, because it's prime time. So what you need to do is bank that demand, or like have a hypothesis, like can we maybe bank the demand and then kind of show the incremental growth later, like maybe start a season early and do like a holiday build, or in the off season, can we incentivize? Is there a creative hypothesis, right?
Yeah.
Is there an audience test there for like certain types of people that may have like a propensity to, do this type of maintenance or whatever that you can kind of test in the off season to kind of like increase it? Because again, it should be about revenue. It shouldn't be about cost, like, cost per lead. It shouldn't be like, it should be at the end of the day, like how many, like, for the quarter, for the year, whatever, whenever they kind of, whatever, like, are they posting the more revenue? And, like, because like their business is like not going to grow if like their only tactic is like we pay the toll to Google every summer.
Oh, but but they're able to net back is amazing during those times too, because it's like Christmas. I mean, if I'm a startup selling a toy people have never heard of, um, if I'm hitting it at Christmas time, oh my God, I could fall down drunk out of bed every day and make money. Try that in January, it's gonna fall flat on my face. It's not gonna work. Um,
Right.
and
Well, yeah, of course. Like you want to be smart about it, but kind of there, like at least with your HVAC example, it sounds to me like that maybe like an opportunity with like toys and stuff like that. Like that's a whole.
Well, I
That's
mean,
a
I guess I'm just going with the someone's AC breaks. I mean, you've got Christmas, you've got to get something for the kids, right? Uh, my AC breaks in the Texas summer. There's no choice, but you're paying for it. And
Yeah,
someone shows up at your house, it's $1,000 right out of pocket. Um, you know,
right.
and so that's when they're like, oh yeah, I'm glad to pay for that, but trying to coax that out when they're not making so much money. Yeah, I think that's a I like the DIY kind of thing you're talking about. This is the one thing I've started recommending to people that this is not an advertising. You can do it for ads, but like short form videos like TikTok, shorts on
Mhm.
YouTube, um, reels on Facebook, and because I think people are absorbing content, and we can see like uh, people are just absorbing lots and lots of content about things that are outside their worldview. We think of what we do as boring, but I don't think everyone agrees with that. I mean, just watching someone do things like being a fly on the wall for things, people are doing things. Sewage, there are people who would I don't want to say eat that up. But we would absorb that content, right? Just filming it, like having a GoPro or breaking out their phone. Like these are very short form, and then just asking, "Hey, did you know?" I mean, how many like experts are like, oh, "I didn't know anything about this," and suddenly I'm like, "Huh, rabbit hole." um, and yeah, getting people to like, you realize this is all you have to do on this, and it's not so yeah, getting people thinking about it, I guess.
That ties in really well with what Casey was saying earlier, like having like the client really be like a partner in the process. I think especially for like, when you talk about social channels and like, boosting on TikTok, kind of boosting kind of within those platforms, like especially for service-based businesses, it could be really powerful to kind of have some of that kind of POV type content, like, oh, here I am, repairing another HVAC that somebody waited 2 years to, fix. If they only waited,
Yeah,
if they only did it sooner. So I think kind of having the like, especially for small service-based businesses, I
Yeah.
think that could be an interesting thing to test, and low cost, creative too.
oh yeah, like this is what that rattle was. Opening it up and showing someone, like then we'd suddenly go, "Oh my god." It's not visible to us. It's just like it's not really a problem until it is. Uh,
Yeah.
man, I've got some dang. I've been how long have we been doing this, Casey? And suddenly feel like I'm doing completely
Yeah.
missing the boat on all right. um, um, mind is suddenly blown. Like the off season is the opportunity. Oh God. I just
Well, sometimes it's not like, if you're trying to like, sell, I don't know, Christmas decorations in January. Well, after January 7th, because for Easter, but like trying to sell Christmas decorations in late January, that may not be the time to do testing either. Obviously, like,
right.
all, you know, all things with like a good thing of cautious, but like I think that there's like opportunities to kind of drive that like market penetration in interesting ways if kind of, because like those, like instead of just kind of doing the online sales and kind of challenging us to kind of almost in some ways go back and kind of like, you know, not be so beholden to metrics that are not like revenue, like, and like actual dollars in the bank, and really thinking about that whole funnel and that whole process. And then thinking about like, you know, like where are those penetration opportunities if we just kind of expand our consciousness a little bit to like, you know, trying new things. And like I said, like I think, you know, the old kind of school thing was, you know, doing SEO, right? Like never getting the credit for it. But we knew that it worked. And even when I was in search, like I would see a halo effect. I'm like, well, you know, I'm only doing like 3, 4 different channels for this little site, you know,
Yeah.
it must be it. I just don't see it because it's invisible. And I think that kind of there's a lot of room, even within kind of paid channels, to do more kind of uh, creative stuff. And I think it kind of takes us out of the mode because a lot of the stuff is just becoming so automated. Like, you know, I punch in, you know, I'm like Google, like, you know, Google's really encouraging us all to like, at least to use like their automated kind of like bidding solutions. Well, it's like, well, you're taking away the keywords and it's kind of, so the space of kind of creativity is how can we use those tools kind of together in an integrated way between channels, and then how can we offer kind of creative experience where we're not just like transacting people anymore, because it's just, you know, it's getting expensive. And well, actually, it's been expensive. It's been expensive, and but like, you know, they're like, and that, you know, I think that that's kind of like the path to kind of growing penetration, right? And even in like the way it plays out is going to be different by category, but I don't know. I think that there's a lot of room to be creative, and I think it's something that even kind of business owners and kind of marketing directors can get excited by, because it's not just like, well, did we make our numbers? Yes, no, you know.
I think you've got some great points there. This is I think there's a point that business owners are looking and going, how much do I have to pay for this? And you know, and to get that, just see, okay, I know, and the conversation for me oftentimes is, well, once we've gotten enough conversion data, we can get that cost for conversion down. Well, that's slowly like smoke and mirrors soon. Um, it-
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think the kind of fundamental thing is like at the end of the day, what they're at, I think kind of shift, like, I think kind of there needs to be a shift in conversation to what really matters is like revenue. And, you know, and for a long time in many ways, and I think we forget this, like Google democratized advertising, right? Because before kind of Google, there was like, I don't know if you guys remember like the funny like personal injury TV ads and the funny, oh gosh, like the auto salesman ads. They were doing some crazy thing on these like local
oh
like like local TV ads. I think were like my favorite ads. They were always the most like, you know, the low production quality and just kind of like really zany, like, you know, buy Crazy Larry's cars.
I remember when they would send someone out to location, and you just had to agree to spend X amount, and then yeah,
Yeah, and I think kind of like, you know, that's kind of like the old and then like the crazy radio ads and things like that. Like I think that kind of there's like, and kind of like all of that kind of has like taken a is gone for the most part. Although I get crazy Spotify ads now, which I'm always interested in. But like I think a lot, so much of the shift has happened to this, like we kind of got locked into this thing that we forgot about that other stuff, because like people were doing, you know, people knew about Crazy Larry's auto dealership before Google, you know. So I think kind of having that a little bit more of like a more multifaceted media plan could be a big opportunity to kind of like relearn some of that for more kind of like diverse types of businesses. You know, because like now video in many ways has gotten democratized. Like there's YouTube, and if you're buying programmatically, you can, you know, you can buy like CTV, and you know, you can buy you can even buy digital out of home. So there's which is more relevant for like more urban locations, but like I think kind of there's room to kind of think in a more expanded way, even for smaller mid-sized businesses, for like what's available to us in terms of just ad formats and to reach people digitally.
And I love the dynamic that shifts when you go to video. We spend like on a, let's say, on a search ad, spend most of our time, most of our energy trying to get that click.
Hmm.
But with video, it's a passive act. Video advertising, you have to choose not to watch the ad.
Yeah.
And which is why we can get it for pennies on the dollar, literally. I'm penny is not unrealistic. 3 cents to getting someone to watch 30 seconds, and we're talking we could have tens of thousands for just a few $100.
Well,
Um,
what's really powerful there, what I love about like video formats is they really hold attention, right? Like with display, you know, they're
yeah.
may or may not be seeing the ad, right? But with and then, you could use it for like bumpers and whatever, but like for video, you're depending on what you see for viewability and whatnot, there you really get like a unit of attention. So I love that, for being able to kind of like let people know, like, hey, my solution, it exists. Hey, this
Yeah.
problem that you have that you don't know is a problem is a problem. And there's a solution. It's me.
Yeah,
Oh my
right.
goodness.
And tell me a search ad that off the top of your head that you remember.
No, because it's very, like it's I already know that, like, if I'm asking the question, I know what I want. And kind
Right.
of with video, what's really, really exciting about it is you can kind of implant the idea so the person can know what question to even ask, right? To kind of like take them to the next step for those like lower funnel, more intent focused channels, you
Right.
know?
Can you take?
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Yeah, and I mean YouTube's such a big money maker for Google these days, like even in comparison kind of to traditional core search. And it shouldn't be kind of surprising, because it, as an advertising medium, it's really powerful for being able to kind of capture a user's attention and still having the like granular kind of like targeting features that kind of we're used to as marketers, to be able to like reach kind of like smaller sets of people and accessible to the small advertiser.
Yeah. So that can you connect YouTube into GA4?
What do you mean?
Like, so you were talking about being able to build audiences off of signals, right? Um, can you connect your YouTube to a GA4 account? Is that do they have a
So
link?
if what you're saying, like, can you kind of, so what you can do with kind of GA4 is that, like, for all of the accounts that you have like linked in, like you can send the audiences to your Google Ads account, and then kind of, I think from there, I think from Google Ads you can advertise on YouTube. I usually go by way of DV360, but I think through Google Ads you can do it as well, if memory serves.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so
See.
you should already have the audiences kind of like in there, and then you'll see like a matching audience size for YouTube. Now, kind of like where it gets kind of a little bit fuzzy is like, what identifier type are you using? Is it like an email based audience? Is it like a Google Analytics based audience or whatever? So if it's off of like a Google Analytics tag, you should be fine. But you want to like mind your match rate, right? Like, do you have like a sufficient audience size to like maintain your pacing? Or do you need to look alike it and kind of like to basically be able to scale it enough to meet your pacing requirements, so you're spending enough? So, but yeah, you can definitely like, so using like the H back thing that we were talking about earlier. So for like, if you have, um, you know, um, you know, home, like, I don't know, like new homeowners, right? Where they
Yeah.
may have the budget to fix things up in their home that may not, that may be old or whatever, or new first-time homeowners, right? If they have it, I don't know. I'm blanking on Google's syndicated taxonomy. It has its limits. It only has so many things. But like, if you found like a family of signals that map with your first party data and like a first time homeowner, sending that out, seeing the sizing and look-aliking it, right? So who looks like people who bought from you in your area, so on and so forth. But you can also in YouTube just like use the syndicated audiences without using your first party data at all and see like, and then the test you can run there is on like one ad group and another ad group, run it with just a third party audience and one where you're seeding it with the first party audience, and which one does better. Like
okay, just compare against those two.
does the visitation make a difference, and just like run it through like through something that looks like some version of sort of statistical significance.
So I guess that's a good the does the visit does the did you say does the visitation make a difference? Is that the way that you phrase that?
Oh yeah, just the website visitors. Like
Right.
basically you're just like kind of collecting them through Google Analytics. I think that there's like I said, what I love about kind of the changing ecosystem, even though it is disruptive, I think that there's a lot of good that comes out of it, because it's kind of challenging us to really, think differently about kind of things that we've been doing for such a long time, and kind of really kind of expanding our aperture for like business of all sizes. And then and also like new bright shiny tools, which I love, and I really loved I love working with like modeling and things like that. And Kevin, I know you're like the expert at kind of like working with like Google's like bidding solutions and things like that.
Yeah, I love those tools.
Yeah.
Well, I want to hear about some tools you're like the bright and shinies, but you've said recently we're talking about these how much the whether a person actually visits your site and how much that actually makes a difference on whether they're likely to be a buyer or customer. I think you cast that into doubt, and maybe like how much does the clicking to the website, is that really a good signal?
So it depends on kind of your business, right? And it depends on your industry. If you are kind of in a, like, let's say like a lead gen type of business, let's say you have you, I don't know, do HVAC, right? Or you do, what's another one that's like really high?
Plumbing and
Plumbing
electricians.
or
Yeah.
electrician or auto rental. Oh, that's the one that's like has like viciously high CPCs, right? If you land on my site, I am deeply, deeply excited about you landing on my site. So chances are that most of my content has something to do about renting cars or HVAC, or like some, even if it's or home improvement, or in some ancillary way. So like I think kind of there's many different ways you can test it, and this is where you can kind of play with those GA4 tools to see kind of if if the client invested like in home repair, I don't know, 10 things that every new first time homeowner should know, and that is getting visitation. That person may not be in market, but they are in category, right? Because to want to fix your HVAC system, you need to own a home. Because if you're a renter, and it's kind of interesting, if you're a renter, that almost feels like it should be a suppression group,
Right.
because like it's kind of, out of all the people in your little area, like if you're renting, you're not like you don't care about your HVAC, so you should almost, which is also another testing opportunity. Should you be in a suppression group, right? Or can you look at your total website visitations and do an overlap on who's a homeowner and then who's like just who's a renter?
Right. Right,
Yeah,
because yeah, they may not have that much influence over their landlord anyways.
yeah, and like
Yeah.
interesting ways to kind of like play with kind of like the tools. And I forget if like Google offers these specific ones from these examples, but just bear with me.
Oh,
So
they do. Yeah.
for other types of businesses, it may be kind of like less relevant. Like, so for example, like if you're just getting a visit to your homepage and you're just like an e-commerce site, the equation totally changes because in an e-commerce scenario, that may be an unhappy camper. And if you hit them with that ad, and they have a, they've had an unhappy product experience, and you're like remarketing them, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so kind of like properly like manage it. So like, there is such a thing as too broad, like, just because like, if you have like a really tight website where it's just like a lead gen machine and it's not like a traditional website experience, and you know what I'm talking about. We land on the homepage and there's like an immediate like give us money form or give us your information so you can then give us money form. That's a sign that may be good for an audience group. But if there's like a lot of options for things you can do on a homepage, I would be reticent to kind of like add that person to like a audience because I don't really know if they're an unhappy camper or not in like a retail kind of type context.
Yeah, they just could be like just yeah. Everything.
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and like also like even and also I don't like button clicks. So because like button behavior, like when you and I'm sure you guys know this, like, just because you clicked doesn't mean you intended to click and you may have clicked back. So speaking of kind of cookieless solutions, I love like server side GTM for clients like, for clients and advertisers that they can kind of implement it because it allows to kind of have a lot more of like a reliable trigger when somebody kind of did an action that's not just like a click thing and then clicked back, right? Like was something to the cart added and like not removed,
Oh man,
and
I went down the GTM server route for a little bit, and I was trying to work on that. This is probably it was like late 21, and so maybe I know it's evolved more, but it was painful, um, and
yeah.
it felt incomplete at the time, but it's probably like they had to have advanced. And then I had to like start paying for like the cloud stuff on my own card and stuff just so I could test. And I was like, I can't just roll this out to
I,
everyone right now.
I think you bring up a great point that there's like an entry point, right? And like I think advertisers themselves have like a point of maturity,
Yeah.
right? For like the different tools, like you're not going to have, a little client spending $1,000 a month can't have like the enterprise stack, like, you know, and and what comes, and as you kind of increment on that like maturity layer, like, what is the appropriate like marketing operations and ad operations maturity that you should have for kind of what you're doing, and I think you hit on a great point. If you're spending $1,000 a month, why should you spend on GCP or like to
Yeah.
be able to host that information if your budget is
Yeah.
is so small,
Yeah.
and kind of what can you do, within the confines of being smaller versus kind of being a giant enterprise operation. And I think that that's like an art form. And how do you get, and I'm curious like to hear from you guys, like how do you get like clients to like increment to that next step and to like, like now we've mastered marketing basic, and like what are like kind of like the wins that you guys see to get them to like intermediate and so on, like
Um. Yeah. Casey.
Oh, I was going to go with Kevin.
Yeah.
So
um. The most of the time it's at least getting their buy-in that I can do it. Which is a challenge. That's because I'm not a developer. I can do a little bit on a website, but that's a. I mean, I'm not sophisticated in Google Tag Manager. Trying to get their buy-in, and this has happened with like clients of various sizes. It's not all just small ones. Many times, I'm describing a problem that they don't know exists, and it sounds like it's for me. Like, okay, but I'm already like dedicating resources for you and what you need, and now you're saying you're going to need more, and I don't understand the problem you're trying to describe. like I don't think a lot of people realize
Oh,
the website security problems that exist right now, and everyone is being attacked with like identity theft, and
yeah.
I think it's going to take some of those. I think it's going to take having examples where people suddenly realize it's not just them that is running into the problem. Everybody is having that problem,
Yeah.
and then there will be a rush. Like, it'll be small at first. That's my thought. It's not a direct. I don't know if this is answering your question much, um, but like that's one of those things that I've been like, hey, attribution. This is a problem. I'm like, I'm seeing the sales. What's the problem, Kevin?
Right.
That's not. It's not the same conversation. It's my concern, and I'm looking at it from up close, and they're like, I don't see the big deal. Um, so a lot of times, like I can get people to buy into, hey, let's do call tracking, and record calls. What do I need that for? You know,
Yeah.
I'm sometimes I'm the one answering the phone most of the time, anyways. But I need this data. um, I don't know.
No, that's interesting. So kind of what I'm hearing is that like even, that the regulatory changes are probably going to like drive some of the kind of things, some of the evolution and make the kind of base cost of doing marketing at all higher. That's kind of
it-
what I'm
yeah,
hearing. Is that right?
yeah. I think it absolutely will. But I think I take it. Yeah, it's absolutely going to. But I think, I mean, because both my son-in-law and my or a good friend down in Houston, both in cybersecurity, they said the solar winds hack. Oh man, like run down in Houston, he was like, dude, the solar winds hack heads rolled. Like that was like IT security was a cost center before.
Mhm.
Now, like Fortune 500, they have been throwing money at buttoning this up. Um, but the smaller companies haven't gotten. They don't realize the threat that's that could happen. They could have their bank accounts. They could have people
Mhm.
getting into. I mean, what happens if someone gets in and locks you out of your email?
Yeah. I think it's a really interesting thing. I think the cost, I think, in some ways it sounds like we're exiting a golden age of just incredibly low cost to start up and run an online business. And kind of, it sounds like the cost of, and this is common with like, I think maturing industries is like, as, the industry matures, kind of smaller players have to kind of, be able to like maintain kind of like a higher, you know, regulatory burden and cost of operating. Like, I mean, even now, kind of maintaining cookie compliance and things like that. Like, with like, I think 5 states now have their own kind of cookieless, like, regulations. So, and if you're just like in one mark, if you're like a not, if you're a local player, not in one of those 5 states, why do you care? You don't care. I don't think Texas is one of the ones yet. But Utah is,
No.
I think. But I think it's kind of interesting because those, how do you kind of prepare people for something that they're not, that they're not sure if it's like coming.
Well, if you're Utah, you're right next to California. Your people are already being impacted. It's a much easier sell to the population.
Yeah,
Here in Texas, there's a very I'd say it's a bipartisan libertarian kind of sentiment of just leave me alone, right?
yeah,
Why do I need to do these things? It's going to take
yeah.
people going, we have to do something before we see real change here.
It's kind of interesting, what is the right story to kind of like get, um, you know, get owners and kind of marketing directors kind of like engaged on some of these matters and to be preemptive. And even kind of at the like enterprise level, I think even Google themselves has been really slow to develop the solutions, which is why I think they moved back the cookie timeline twice now. That like I'm recalling offhand. So I think kind of we're all, in some ways maybe it's, wise to kind of like take a wait and see approach and, like when, like because it's like sometimes when you're too much on like the bleeding edge, then you spend, and then it like especially because right now there's so many different solutions. You spend, and what if it turns into the wrong one? Then you end up being like a Flash developer having to like totally retool your whole
Ooh,
identity.
there's an ugly story.
Ah, that's painful.
Were you a Flash
Yeah.
developer, Casey?
I towards the end of the Flash wave.
No way.
Yeah.
Was it painful?
It was, yeah. I didn't even like Flash when it was in its heyday, and I'm like, because I still had, not that I've always been a marketer, but even from I was a server admin, and just using Flash was like you can't see anything that's there from a coding perspective or anything. It's just it's worse than a video. At least a video has sound and movement, and there's code behind it that's showing it there. But with Flash, there's just nothing. There was nothing, and it was, yeah. So yeah,
Was that the last thing you did before you got it? Like I need to hear this origin story. So was that the like last thing you did, and then you made the move into like doing marketing?
yeah. So I was a server admin for 5 years. Well, network support, and worked my way up to server admin. And then '08, I was asked to help host some sites. And then we moved from hosting to, well, I mean, I know coding enough to where I can make sites. So I started making sites, and yeah, then we just, once you start making sites, well, now people want them to rank. So it just was a rabbit hole that I just kept falling further deeper into. And now I I was told by a buddy that does server admin that I could probably come back and pick it up after about a month because not a whole lot's changed, but I don't want to go relearn it all.
you
Yeah, this
know,
is this is
oh,
way too much more fun. So
there's so many there's so many like different like people in this industry. Like I think I'm always surprised. I don't think I've ever asked someone like, so how did you get into like marketing? How did you get into media? And I'm just like not surprised. Like I'm always like people always, especially the longer they've been in, it's always this weird roundabout kind of like strange story
yeah,
Yep.
of how like they got in.
yep,
I don't, as an advertiser, I don't think any kid grows up going, I want to be an advertiser when I grow up.
no,
It's just that I think the narrative is pretty much, God, I hate these ads. I wish they'd go away.
yeah,
Live long enough as a hero to see yourself become the villain.
I'm owning that role. Ha
yeah,
ha. um,
yeah,
now my entire everything that I've like, I mean, basically, the longer you're in something, you're rewiring your brain to be this, and that's heavily been about targeting and can performance. And now I'm needing to go. My brain's reeling, going, where where do I sidestep? Oh yeah,
Mhm.
as you're pointing out. Oh yeah, all those other marketing skills have been developing. They've kind of been sometimes ancillary. Really need to be
Yeah.
kind of more forefront. A couple wrap up questions, Casey.
yep.
All right.
All right. So, what do people often get wrong about what you do?
Oh, better question is what did they get right? So I think kind of what people get wrong about when you're on more on the technology side of marketing is kind of that need for synergy, and how kind of just because you're on kind of like the more technology kind of part of the business, um, the kind of it's easy to forget that having that synergy and kind of working as one team is really important. and creativity comes from a lot of different areas, because you have a lot of, like I said, like marketing has become so fragmented, and there's so many different type of people to, like, I call getting like at least like an enterprise campaign, like getting a 747 off the ground. There's a lot of different characters involved, and I think kind of we need to be kind of collaborative now more than ever. And I think that need for collaboration and kind of really like, kind of getting all of those unique perspectives is really something that I think is like such a key to success now, and is very, it sounds light and fluffy, but I think it's something that's really underestimated.
Sweet.
Good answer.
All right. So, what is something on your bucket list that you still need to check off?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm supposed to be getting married like in 2023, so that I'm going to put that down as my bucket list item. So
Good. See, I like that.
Congratulations.
I like that answer, because my follow-up question, you can't say that. What is one thing you have not gotten to in your life that if you do not get to will be a massive regret?
Oh no, okay. Oh well. Oh man, I should have waited to give my. Okay, so okay, let me pick another one. So massive regret if I don't do it. Oh wait, I'm stumped. No, I've been doing so much talk. Like, ooh, took you all night to stump.
It's a total change of direction, right?
Uh-huh.
Wait, I think. I don't know. Like, I don't know. Wait, hold on. That totally came out of left field.
Uh-huh.
I think one thing that I would feel real, I've got one. So I've always wanted to kind of take a road trip from Greece and kind of like drive like the entire kind of Adriatic coast, like through the Balkans, and kind of like go into Italy.
Oh, that sounds
So
Wow.
amazing.
like I think like I want to do, I'm probably going to be like 90 years old in like a smart car or whatever, like that's self-driving to do this. So because it's a big drive, but I would love to do kind of just, yeah, like that, like go through the, by the water, through the mountains and all of that, like, and get to practice my Italian, which is horrific. um just like upset the locals with my horrible Italian, just be just another American, just
Yeah.
horrifying them with my bad language skills.
You'll be
um
wearing a headset that auto translates for you. It won't matter.
yeah, yeah, well, but that's, it's part of the charm is how bad it is.
It's a feature, not a flaw, right?
Yeah, it's, I work in marketing. My job to kind of create the story around it. Yeah, so that would be my answer.
Okay. Then we'll follow that one up with, if you could live anywhere, where would you live?
Oh, well, so I would like split my time between New York and the Balkans.
Dude.
Yeah.
And that sounds like what you've been doing, right?
Well, yeah, well, well, not anymore. I'm back. I'm fully
Uh,
fully back in New York.
oh, so you got a little homesickness?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
what can you do? But like at least kind of like the office here has killer views. So,
Yeah.
like it could be worse.
Yeah. Okay. So, what is your favorite book? It could be just any book. It could be a marketing book. Just
Um, so I think my favorite, you're really like stumping me tonight. Let's see, my favorite book. So my favorite book in general, so I'm a reader, so this is like a tough one. I think kind of a good kind of like recent-ish read like was I revisited Dune, because the movie I read it like a million years ago, and kind of it's really crazy when you read something when you're like 14, and then many, 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 many years later, because then you have the perspective for what you thought when you were 14, and then you go into this like wormhole where you're like totally a different person, and then you read it again, and it's been really interesting going on that journey reading that book. And then my favorite marketing book was actually a recommendation for someone I used to work with. The Hardest Thing About Hard Things. I don't know if it's like a marketing, it's more of like a general business book, but it covers marketing. And
Okay.
also Peter Thiel's book. I hate recommending anything by, Peter Thiel's a controversial character, but his book 0 to 1 is also I found it to be an enjoyable read.
Okay.
He's thought provoking.
But his book's good, I can separate, the content from, crushing Gawker.
Yeah. All right. Last question. How do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered as being like nice and helpful and and okay and pretty good at marketing.
Good answer.
Awesome.
Or rather kind of the converse. I don't want to be remembered as having been bad at marketing. I don't want the lowest person at the funeral be like when you see like the obits or however you're like, whoa.
Oh God. You don't want to be that person.
Yeah, man, he drove my business to the ground with his marketing skills.
Can you imagine? Whether let me hope to like not be remembered as being bad, and hopefully being remembered as like, we saved a little money, we got some leads, we got some sales.
Things were
kind.
Yeah, I will take not being that guy over being oh wow. I'm like, I just don't want to be that,
Being memorably, no, there's some like I forget. There's like, oh my gosh, I was watching like a mini like documentary about like historically terrible ads that like crashed businesses. And as like a professional working in the field, like that's like the type of thing that's like haunting. Like I'm just like, oh my gosh, like like what do you even do? Like I'll have to like in the resources, I'll have to like find and share it. Like I saw that and I was like, oh, let us hope that.
I love watching really bad like old commercials that I'm like, oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
I forget the one. It was something like a Buick one or something, or a Lincoln one. Like it was some kind of car company, and they did one commercial that like kind of crashed their business.
Ooh.
Like they were like already like an aging brand, and they didn't misunderstood their kind of position. Oh, I have to find it.
Wow. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, Bonnie. Loved it. This has been another marketing chat with Casey and Kevin. Do I have that right order?
Sure.
Okay, sure.
That sounds good with me.
All
Whatever.
All right.